Hi gang, today we are going to be making a quick and easy lentil stew. This recipe is in your chip cookbook on page 123. And this is really a base recipe, and think that you could add any extra vegetables that you have in your fridge or any seasonings to really make it your own and hit the flavor preferences that you enjoy. So to begin, I've just been sauteing a yellow onion here. And usually you'll want to do this for about 5 to 7 minutes, so that's why I got started before the video. The onions, you know that they're ready when they have kind of a brown translucent look. And I always just keep a little water on hand, so as they do start to caramelize and stick to the pan, you have a little liquid ready to go to just loosen those up. And all of that browning that happens with the onions on the pan, that's the flavor really developing. That's the caramelization of the onions. So we do want to have that as a part of the flavor to our soup or stew. So again, we'll just use a little bit of that liquid to deglaze the pan, loosen up those brown bits, and incorporate that into our soup or stew. All right, so we have our onion that we've been cooking. As I mentioned, this is a mushroom and lentil stew, so the next thing that we're going to add is some sliced cremini mushrooms. You could use whatever type of mushrooms that you love, white mushrooms, portobello mushrooms, whatever you enjoy. So the recipe calls for 3 cups sliced. I purchased this bag at Trader Joe's. It's $2.99 for the pre-sliced mushrooms for 10 ounces. So this is a really good price and it makes it really simple to just add these to your pot. And mushrooms, like onions, have a really high moisture content. So as these cook down, they're really going to add a lot of moisture to the pan. So you won't need too much of your water to deglaze the pan, since the mushrooms will be kicking off a lot of moisture and help with that. Okay, these are going to continue to cook down, and I have my temperature set to about a medium-high heat, so that we're able to saute the vegetables, but we're not burning them. Okay, and that temperature is a little bit different on every stove. So that would be about a 5 or a medium, but since all stovetops cook a little bit differently, it's something you'll play with a bit on your stovetop at home. All right, so we're gonna let these mushrooms cook. Again, this will be, 4 to 5 minutes as we're really just browning these mushrooms and letting them start to glaze over a bit. And meanwhile, I've prepped some of our other ingredients, so I'll go ahead and talk through those. After the mushrooms are cooked, we're going to add in some garlic. The recipe calls for, just 2 cloves, but if you really like garlic, go ahead and add more. We know that there are a lot of health benefits to garlic, and it can help to keep our immune system strong, especially as we head into cold and flu season. And one other interesting thing about garlic, you'll see I have it chopped and ready to go here, is that we know there are certain compounds in garlic that can be very protective against cancer. But to get the most out of your garlic, you need to chop it and then let it sit for about 10 minutes for those chemical reactions to occur and those compounds to develop. So I like to chop my garlic and then just let it sit while I'm doing my sauteing of the other vegetables. I also wait to add my garlic to the pan until the other vegetables are sauteed and ready to go. And I do that for a few reasons. One is that garlic is a little bit sticky, and since we don't want things to get too sticky in the pan, so I'll add the garlic toward the end of the saute process. Also, if you cook garlic for too long, it can get a little bit bitter and it can lose some of those cancer preventive compounds. So I try not to overcook the garlic, both for flavor and for the health benefits. All right, giving this a stir here. Wonderful. The other ingredients that we're going to add are some tomato paste. Again, I just picked this up at Trader Joe's. I believe it's 69 cents for a can. And then we also have some chopped tomatoes as well. I have 2 kinds here just to show you a variety. One is from Trader Joe's. Again, this is diced and no salt added, vine-ripened tomatoes. I love it. And in speaking with the folks at Trader Joe's, I also know that they use a BPA-free liner in the cans. Another brand that I really love is called Mere Glen. And one of the reasons I love Mere Glen is because you can find fire roasted, no salt added tomatoes. And it says right here on the can, field the can in 8 hours. So very fresh, very ripe when they can them. But that fire roasted element adds an extra layer of flavor to the tomatoes that I really love. And it's hard to find fire roasted with no salt added. So I love Mere Glen, also a BPA-free can. And we just know with things like tomato products that have a higher acid content, it can cause some leaching of the lining in the can. So that's where we're really thinking that BPA-free liner is an important feature. And we're seeing that more and more in the food industry that canned items are BPA-free. Okay, so since our mushrooms are looking pretty cooked down with our onions here, I'm gonna go ahead and add our garlic. And today, just 2 cloves chopped, so it's not too overpowering for anyone who's not a huge garlic fan. And we'll just stir that in and let it cook for about a minute. Garlic falls into the category of what we call aromatics when we're cooking. So other things that would fall into that group would be ginger and jalapeno, foods that really just add a lot of flavor to our food. So very good. And it's especially important as we're doing more low sodium cooking that we're thinking about ways to really add in the flavor. So onions and garlic have such a rich flavor. So do mushrooms. Mushrooms hit the flavor sensation of umami, or that sort of richness that we look for in food, especially things like a hearty stew. And mushrooms also add kind of a chewy texture to things. So it's just a really great texture to have in a soup where a lot of things will be a little bit softer, so you'll have some of that chewiness from the mushrooms. All right, so we'll go ahead and now add in our cans of chopped tomato and a tablespoon of tomato paste. Tomato paste also hits that umami sensation, so it's a really nice way to just get that richness in your soup or stew. All right, so now we have our tomatoes, our mushrooms, our onions, and our garlic in our soup pot. Move these out of the way. I'll turn this up just a little bit. The more items that we add to the pot that are at room temperature, then it's going to cool down everything else in the pot. So we'll turn it up just a little bit to get that saute going again. Okay, just a few more ingredients here and our soup will be complete. So we're going to be adding in some pre-cooked lentils. And again, I picked up this box from Trader Joe's. It can be a challenge to find pre-cooked lentils compared to other types of legumes. Really easy to buy canned beans or boxed beans. Lentils are a little trickier to find. So you'll see in the recipe that you can use dried lentils, which cook up in about 20 to 25 minutes, so very doable. Or you can use the pre-cooked. Again, I found these at Trader Joe's. So I'm just going to add these brown lentils into our soup pot. And as you start to add more legumes, again, beans and lentils into your diet, there are certain types that are a little bit easier to digest than others. And lentils are one of the legumes that are just a little bit easier to digest as you're making that transition. So it's a good place to start. Okay, mixing that all in. Okay, now to add a little bit of saltiness to this recipe, this is optional. You can add it if you want to or leave it out if you'd like, but the recipe calls for a tablespoon of low sodium tamari. Tamari is a gluten-free soy sauce. You can also use coconut aminos. You can just use regular low sodium soy sauce. But the really important thing is just to look for that reduced sodium or 50% less sodium, because soy sauce can be really, really high in salt. So we'll add some today. The recipe also suggests an optional teaspoon of salt. I'm gonna leave that out today. I think this will give us plenty of saltiness to the dish. Okay, so when we talk about a stew compared to soup, we're thinking of something that's just a little bit chunkier and a little bit thicker in texture. If you want something that's a little bit thinner, more like a soup, then just use a low sodium vegetable stock or vegetable broth, and you can just thin it out however much you'd like. That's totally up to you. All right, well that does it for our stew today. We're gonna just bring it up to a boil, turn it down to a simmer, and let it cook for about 5 to 10 minutes. Since we used the pre-cooked lentils today, the soup is done at this point. We're just letting those flavors kind of marry and really let the heartiness of the lentils and the mushrooms and the tomatoes come together. Once it's done cooking, we're gonna add about a 1/4 cup of fresh chopped parsley. And I just wanted to show you, this is how I like to store my fresh herbs at home, in a glass filled with water, similar to how you would store flowers. And every couple of days you can just trim the ends, change the water, and I've had herbs last for a couple of weeks this way. And you can just leave them sitting out on your countertop as long as you're, keeping them fresh and that the temperature isn't too hot in the kitchen. All right, and just one last note on parsley. When you're chopping your parsley, just take the time to pull the leaves. Of course, this has been washed. Take the time to pull the leaves off of the stem. The stem of parsley can get a bit bitter, and that's not the flavor we're looking for. So pull those leaves off and then chop up about a 1/4 cup and toss it into your stew, and you're ready to go. The last piece is that you can make a really delicious cashew cream to add to this to kind of give it a creamy texture, and I'll show you that next.